Welcome to ACP, the Amazon Connect podcast. This is the show that focuses on Amazon Connect and related technologies. I'm your host, Tom Morgan, and I'm joined as usual by my co-host, AWS Solution Architect and Contact Center Consultant, Alex Baker. Find out more about Cloud Interact by visiting us at cloudinteract.io. It's time for another ACP, and I'm here and Alex is here, and today we are going to be talking all about Amazon Connect screen recording. This is another kind of deep dive where we're going to kind of go into some detail about a particular feature, and today it's going to be the screen recording feature of Amazon Connect. But first of all, Alex, hello, how are you? How's everything?
Hi, Tom. Yeah, good, thank you. How about you?
Yeah, all good, thank you. It's busy time of year, isn't it? I think feels like it. But
Yeah, it has been very busy, but always interesting stuff. New and exciting sort of custom-made use cases come out of all the migration activity and everything we're doing at the moment. So yeah, it's busy but exciting.
Yeah, definitely. Amazon Connect screen recording is a sort of separate thing from Amazon Connect. It's not on by default. It's a thing you would decide to turn on and opt into. Let's start from the kind of right from the top. Apart from the title, what is it? Like, what does it do? And it's been around for a little while now. It's not completely new, is it?
No, I had a check back through the release notes, and I think it was announced in June 2023 initially. And aware of people sort of asking for it and saying it would be a useful addition way before that. But yeah, I mean, I guess it sort of does what it says on the tin in that it does record the whole screen or screens of the agent whilst the agent is on a contact.
Okay. So this is about recording agent activity, nothing to do with customers. Customer continues to call in as normal using a phone. This is about what's on the agent's computer and kind of recording the screen whilst they're taking that call.
Yeah, exactly. And one slight curveball to that is a more recent announcement was screen sharing. So within chat or the Amazon Connect web voice, you can now do screen sharing. But yeah, like I say, not specifically the screen recording, but another useful addition.
So let's talk through all of this. So it records the whole screen. So it's not just like recording the CCP. It's not recording just like the agent workspace. It is everything you've got going on that screen, your emails, your Slack, your whatever else is you're looking at on Reddit. It's everything, right? It's the whole screen. And it's multiple screens supported as well. I think up to 3 screens.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
But yes, it is the whole lot. So everything on all of your up to 3 screens. Yeah. We mentioned it already, but the important distinction is that it is whilst an agent is on a contact. So it's not doing full screen recording of their entire day. It's while they're on a voice or chat or task. So any of the supported contact types, whilst they're on a contact.
Got it. And that gets tied to that call in some way, which I think we're going to talk about later. But it's, yeah, that's where it gets interesting, I suppose, for reviewing calls, is that you can see quite quickly without having to search timestamps and things, what the agent was doing at the time they took that call.
Yeah. I can see that it would be quite useful perhaps for coaching. So you're already doing, we've done a session on quality monitoring and evaluation forms. Maybe you're already doing that in a more of a manual capacity. This adds another sort of lens to it. You can obviously look at the screen of what the agent's doing during the contact and get that extra dimension to it. Maybe, if you think agents are taking too long to handle a contact or maybe not following business processes, this might allow you to, rather than just having that audio perspective on things, you can look at what's going on their screens as well. Are they looking in the right place for knowledge articles, that kind of thing?
Right. Yeah. I mean, actually, I've just thought of this. We didn't talk about this when we were putting together the show. It'd be an interesting thing for partners to do as part of a requirements gathering exercise, just understanding like how agents work with different CRMs in the background whilst on a call, asking them to partake in some recording sessions would be a quite easy way of gathering that information.
Yeah, I can definitely see benefits in, if you think there are efficiency improvements to be had around. We quite often hear about agents who are entering data into 3 different applications, for example. Being able
Mm.
to see that with your own eyes during a discovery phase would be quite useful, definitely.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Can agents pause the recording at all?
Agents cannot natively pause it. No,
Mm,
there are APIs around the contact recording in general. So there's
mm,
a suspend and a resume contact recording API.
mhm.
So if you wanted to build something into your own custom CCP or custom desktop, then you could build in that functionality. But
Yeah,
no, within the native CCP or agent workstation, it isn't something the agent can do.
got it. Yeah, I guess that's one to be aware of, because if you do things like take credit card payments and stuff like that, you might want to pause the recording. So you need to have some way of doing that. Yeah, depending on how you do your PCI stuff. Like, but if it involves the agent typing something into something on a screen, then that's going to get recorded. So you want to kind of bear that in mind.
Yeah, it's probably a really good question for if you have a PCI solutions third party vendor, it would be a good thing to discuss with them. So we're thinking of turning on screen recording. Does that have any effect on how the PCI compliance solution works? It definitely, I could see that it's worth knowing how it all works in the background and whether that's covered.
I suppose those same people will have other questions as well around the security and compliance angle, because this is like, it could be, you know, PII information. It's sensitive. It could be sensitive to the agent, depending on what the agent is doing at the time. It might get used in disciplinaries. It might be highly personal. What happens to this data? Where does it go? Where is it stored? And all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, good question. Very much like the audio recording, the call recording side of things, the screen recordings are stored in S3. They're
Mhm.
stored as MP4 files, and you can specify, well, first of all, in the main Connect instance settings, you can specify whether or not screen recording is on as a whole for your instance.
Mhm.
And if you don't have it enabled there, if you were to try and then enable it in a call flow block, which we can come onto in a bit more detail, even if you tick the box in the call flow, it wouldn't work if you don't have it enabled at the instance level. But the other thing you can do there, in relation to your question, is you can specify the S3 bucket that the screen recordings go into, and you can also specify a KMS key to encrypt the data with.
And I think the recording of the screen kind of gets mixed with the audio and in the correct timestamping. So you get like one MP4 file that is the audio of the call, if it's an audio call, and like the screen as well, which is quite nice actually. Yeah.
Yep. And then when you're interacting with it just sort of supplements what you get anyway in the contact search, in that you'll have your, like you say, what was previously just an audio file, you'll get the full MP4 file, and you can sort of click into different parts of the recording and move to that section of the screen recording with the accompanying audio. So it's
Okay.
quite a nice sort of native user experience.
Okay. That's good. But also means you need to consider who has access to all those contacts as well. I guess from a kind of security perspective, it's another bunch of data on top of just basic contact information. So maybe it's a review of who has access to all these things.
Yeah, definitely. And always recommend sort of looking carefully at security profiles first of all within Amazon Connect. So for my Connect user base, who has access to the screen recordings and the call recordings as a whole, only give it to those who actually need it to perform their role. Then you've got further granularity around things like download. We always tend to recommend that try and restrict that as much as possible. Keep all the data in the system. Don't have it sort of running rogue out in the wild, because people are able to download the audio and the screen recordings.
Mm.
Then you've also got the considerations around the wider AWS account. So within your identity and access management roles, again, make sure you're just restricting access to that data as much as possible. So if you've got a cloud engineer who's working on S3, do they need to have access to the data in the call center buckets? Can you restrict it to a sort of need to know basis?
Mhm. Yep, that makes sense. And if you're IT minded, you're probably wondering, how can it be possible for Amazon Connect to record the screen of an agent? And the answer to that is there's some software to download. There's this client-side software that needs to be installed in order for this to work on every agent machine that is going to be, taking the call. There's an MSI for it, so you could roll it out. It's silent. You can silent install it. When it runs, it's completely silent, so it sits as a process in the background. There's no UI. Agents don't really know it's running unless they go looking in the process list. But it needs to be running in order for this to work at all. On top of all the other things we've just spoken about setting it up and enabling it and all the rest of it. There are some hardware requirements. They're not crazy, just kind of looking through them, like a 2 gig CPU, like 2.5 gigs memory. The network is the one to keep an eye on, I think, especially if you've got like a dense contact center with, tens or hundreds of agents. If you think about what it's doing, it's uploading in real time, more or less, to S3. So like you do need to sort of think about that, because that could be a real upload drain on your network. There's some ports and stuff to open as well to let it do its thing. I think port 5431, which is an unusual one, needs to be open to allow the upload to happen. And then there's a list of IP addresses to access S3 if you do IP restriction as well. So it's not, I don't think it's crazy or particularly onerous. It's something for IT to think about because it's a process. It should be part of the build for agent machines. And also it becomes problematic where you have agents who maybe are not always using company issued machines and things like that because they won't have that stuff installed. So if you've got like a disparate contact center of people who are in and out doing other things, and some of the time they're taking connect calls for you, but they're doing it on machines that you don't directly control, then I guess that's a consideration as well, because then it's no longer just a web-based kind of cloud system, right? It needs this thing done locally.
Yeah, and it's quite unique in that respect within Connect's ecosystem, I suppose, in that it's the only feature that does need that install on the client's machine.
Which is,
And
yeah, I think it's fine. It depends what it's for. And we should come on to this in a minute. It's like, what are you doing this for? Like, it becomes a problem if you're trying to achieve 100% of every call always recorded on every machine by every agent, and you've got a disparate workforce. It does become tricky. But if that's not, if the desire is merely to try and find process improvements by you selecting small groups of people and running tests on them and stuff like that, it probably feels okay.
yeah, a point that came to mind actually in terms of, because you're right, I guess it's kind of increasing the bandwidth requirements quite a lot. Also the storage requirements, because it's going to be a much bigger file for each contact that you're saving. You're going to start to fill up your S3 bucket quite a bit quicker than if it was just the audio you were saving.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to consider running a proof of concept on it, or doing screen recording on only a percentage of contacts. And that's something that you could do, as with quite a lot of other stuff within the contact flows. You could have a percentage split and just say we want to, just for quality purposes, we want to record 10%, screen record 10% of the calls.
And actually, that price thing is worth considering because, yeah, it's not just the S3 cost. There is a additional charge to doing this. It's very small. It's 0.006 of a dollar per recorded minute, which sounds very small. But obviously, if you're doing a lot of minutes, then it adds up quick, as does, as you say, the S3 costs of doing so as well, and potentially the impact on your network as well. So I'd say it's worth having a reason to do this. Don't just turn it on because. But yeah, we should probably come on to actually why you might do this. What's the point? And we've touched on this a little bit around training, around optimization, like process flow optimization. And I think that's the example actually that Amazon Connect give in their documentation for it around, one agent can complete a task in 2 minutes and the other agent takes them 4 minutes. What's the difference? Being able to compare the screen recordings would, help you do that. I'd argue maybe just going to talk to them might tell you that as well. But yeah, you can sort of see at scale how this might provide performance optimizations. I wonder if there's other reasons as well.
Yeah, we mentioned earlier, like you said, but adding that additional sort of lens to the QM process, so being able to not only hear what's going on, but see what's going on. So you can track within contact lens long periods of silence, for example. Now, arguably, it's useful, and you know that the agent is doing something in the background, which means they're not continuing that interaction with the customer. it's probably quite a good thing to be able to see their screen and figure out, are they actually going through the process that they need to follow, or are they kind of scratching around trying their best to
Mm.
find something to help answer that customer's query, but they're not able to find it? Is that a training issue? Is it an accessibility or knowledge articles issue?
And I think, yes, there's definitely that. I think there's probably some value in kind of fraud detection or malicious behavior detection. I mean, less so for the PCI stuff, because I think you'd want to pause it for those things. But I'm thinking about kind of leaking out customers' names and addresses, maybe malicious behavior, anything like that that might show up from having screens recorded. That might be a reason to do it as well. And again, it might just be a spot thing like employee under investigation or something like that, where it becomes part of the kind of standard mix that enterprises go through. It's a whole thing, like when you work in big enterprises, isn't it? Where there's a whole flow that happens where you have your suspicions or something has happened and you need to retain information about an employee because it might end up as a court case. So this could be part of that process where it's kind of selectively enabled for certain people.
Yeah, compliance, adherence. Also, I guess troubleshooting. So, from our own perspective, if we're troubleshooting things like intermittent network issues where the agent is saying connector's working fine most of the time, but occasionally I get these
Mm.
dropouts and I get these errors on the CCP, being able to see that is
Mm.
actually really useful.
I do wonder how agents feel about this because it's quite emotive, isn't it? Like, and being recorded, I think everyone it feels different from voice recording. If I, as an agent, I think I get all the call, like my calls will be recorded, and mostly that's to protect me as much as it is the customer and the company. Recording the whole screen feels like an additional step on top of that, and I can imagine it is quite emotive. At the same time, I totally get that these are businesses and they need to run as efficiently as possible. It's not the agent's machine; it's the enterprise's machine, and this is their requirement. But the reason I think it's interesting is that it came out more or less at the same time, not quite, a little bit before Microsoft Recall, which came out kind of the start of this year, which is a slightly similar but different thing. And if you haven't heard of Microsoft Recall, you know what it is. It was Microsoft's announcement that they were going to build into Windows this ability to screen share everything essentially that happens on your PC and kind of store it all on your machine and then give you like a large language model and a chat interface so you could query it and talk about it. The idea being that it could be quite handy and helpful for, having this kind of almost like memory of what you did on your machine to help answer those questions like, where's that file that I made last week? Or like, tell me about this thing I did that I've forgotten about, or, what was it I did that, in this piece of code or something that I changed and I now can't remember what it was and all this sort of stuff. But people went crazy for it in a bad way. I think part of that was the way it was signaled and the way it was spoken about. But there were, people worried about, people watching and everything that's on my machine and it getting out and it being leaked and all these sort of things. And people get very uppity about security for good reasons. But it's interesting to compare and contrast, right? Something like Recall, which is like, we're going to record your PC. And people like, hey, no, thanks. And this, which is like, we're going to record agents. And they're like, oh, yeah, fine. It feels weird. Like maybe it's because it's not happening to them. They're less worried about it. But I don't know. Yeah. I don't know
Yeah.
what you think about it.
I mean, it's in general, it's a bit sort of Big Brother, isn't it? And
Hmm.
just another facet to the kind of constant monitoring that you may feel that you're under, especially as an agent. But yeah, the flip side is, everyone's probably fairly accepting of that fact now that I'm here to do a job. I'm on a work computer. Probably there's a whole host of other ways that I could possibly be monitored. So yeah, I'm sort of in two minds about it.
Yeah, definitely. And some of that, I think sometimes I forget that as knowledge workers, which essentially is what we have a slightly different deal with the company, I suppose. It's a bit more flexible in terms of work-life balance as well. It's more flexible in terms of how, personal use versus corporate use and things like that. And there's that give and take that, yeah, sometimes I might check my email on the side, but also sometimes I might work a little bit longer than I should, And so there's that kind of give or take. Whereas I imagine it's a bit more formalized in that kind of contact center experience where like it's important that you are present for these periods when you're on shift and not when you're off shift and all these kind of things. And so it's a bit more like I'm fully at work versus this kind of work life balance thing. I don't know, but
Yeah.
it is interesting. Yeah.
And again, that important distinction that it is only when you're on a contact that it's being recorded.
Yes, that's true. I keep forgetting that actually. So, because that was one of my other questions, like there are other solutions that do this, like screen recording solutions in the enterprise is a whole thing and can be way more Big Brother than what we're talking about here. Recording toilet break times and all those sort of things. Recording when was it? I saw this thing around, it was like a venture, it was a startup thing. It was doing depressingly well, but sensors in the seats for like how long you're actually at your desk and stuff like that. It's a whole cottage industry. Yeah, you're right. Actually, this is maybe a better approach to that by intentionally only recording, actual interactions and then saving them for use when talking about those interactions rather than, here's just like what Bob did last Tuesday. It's much more if you want to know what the agent, who may or may not be Bob, was doing, for this particular call, this is an easy way to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I suppose with things like workforce management or forecasting, capacity planning and scheduling, there's already a lot of data, and I suppose the encouragement for adherence where you have that scheduled break or you start work at 9, you have a break at 11 o'clock, you have lunch at 12:30. Those are your scheduled times, and the adherence to that schedule is fairly scrutinized as well. I think it is just, I suppose it's the nature of the industry that is a bit more prevalent than in other cases.
I think it is because you've got the pattern of calls coming in that the organization knows about, the trend of when it's busy, when it's not busy, and it's needing to maintain the capacity in the system to service those calls leads to that adherence being important. It's no good everybody being all flexy and deciding that they're all going to come in at 9:30 and take a long lunch break. That doesn't line up with the flow of calls that are coming through the system. So,
yeah, totally. Yeah.
We should talk about AI, but before we do, there's one kind of important thing I wanted to point out that I saw kind of looking through and doing research for this. There's no restrictions on where this will work. What I mean by that is like if you've got Amazon Connect deployed, you can turn this on. So that like geographically, this will technically work everywhere. That doesn't mean you should turn it on everywhere. There are like geographical legal restrictions on some of this stuff in different countries. Amazon Connect are saying that's on you. We're not going to stop you. Like this is up to you, figure it out. So I'm just kind of flagging that Amazon will let you turn it on, but it's up to you to make sure that if you are going to turn it on, that's the right thing to do for your workforce.
Yeah, it's a big one for your legal department to make that decision in the geographies that you work in. From our experience, places like Germany, to pick one, are a bit more strict on things like the sort of data you can collect for reporting on particular agents, and I'm sure that it would extend to this as well, right? So there's probably more restrictions around what you can do with the screen recordings and how you deal with them.
Yeah, and absolutely, and it might not even be as. In some cases, it might be a straight no, but in some cases, it might be you can, but there's got to be a really good reason. So you can't just like blanket do everybody just on the off chance. But if there's good reasons, like such as the ones we've talked about, and it's very specific, then it's doable. Yeah, but so do go and find out about those things. AI, so kind of interesting. So this feels like somewhere where AI could be interesting and make a difference, only in that it's a lot of data. There's a lot to look at. It may actually be that the AI isn't quite there yet. I don't know. It's interesting. There's nothing built in right at the moment for around sort of contact lens analysis or
not that I'm aware of. So you're, I suppose, in the interesting situation where you can increasingly fully automate your quality monitoring process if you wanted to around the voice part of the call, but it doesn't take into account what's going on the screen recording. So I see that there is a bit more of a manual process around QM using the screen recording still. Maybe that's fine because you're able to much more efficiently automate the QM on the audio part of it. And then if you want to sort of go in and check what's going on the screen recording off the back of that, then you have it available to you. But yes, it's an interesting, you mentioned you have the Microsoft Replay, was it called?
Recall.
Recall, sorry.
Mm.
That example where it's, it sounds like the AI model around that is a bit more mature. I think there's definitely scope for that here, but yes, not natively available at the moment.
Yeah. It might just be, I'm kind of struggling to think what would be useful. Like, and the stretch that I've come to, which is a little bit weak, but hear me out, is as part of the call, like I looked something up in a CRM, but like you gave me one name and I looked up a slightly different name, and then that it ended up that I gave the wrong information or something weird happened. Like maybe that's a thing AI could kind of call out and flag as part of this. I don't know, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's kind of tricky to work out what those optimizations could be. And maybe Amazon just thought, well, we'll put this out now and people will use it. And by using it, we will learn where AI can be helpful, which is also not a bad strategy. Like, find out where the pain points are and find out where this tech could be useful before adding it.
Yeah, agreed. I definitely think there's loads of scope for doing some interesting stuff there, and maybe even third-party vendors adding their own wrap around it. So you do the screen recording in Connect, you do all the contact lens analysis, but you have that additional wraparound to take the screen recording and get more out of that.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's really, it's interesting. It's interesting to think through what this might look like in 12, 24 months' time. So we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, cool. Well, it's been a real deep dive into screen recording. So yeah, thank you very much. I think it feels like we could carry on talking about it, but we should probably bring this episode to an end. It is an interesting topic, isn't it? Yeah, but yes, we should bring this episode to an end. Thank you very much, Alex, for your insights and your knowledge about screen recording. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Be sure to subscribe in your favorite podcast player. That way you won't miss the next one. Whilst you're there, we would love it if you would rate and review us. And as a new podcast, if you have colleagues that you think would benefit from this content, please let them know. To find out more about how Cloud Interact can help you on your contact center journey, visit cloudinteract.io. We're wrapping this call up now, and we'll connect with you next time.